Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Pampering Vanity set, which includes the crochet tissue box organizer and matching tray. These are very simple patterns, primarily made in single crochet, so this is going to be a pretty quick walkthrough. To make these patterns, you'll need Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie and a US H-hook. This one is by Furls. You'll also want some stitch markers, just makes it a little bit easier. The tissue box organizer pattern is designed for a square box, but in the written instructions, which I've got linked at the link in the description, you will find that I have also written it out to fit really any size box. So you can customize this for your own tissue box and create this great extra bit of storage in any room in the house. You can see it's great for crochet hooks as well as your makeup items. So although I've called it a vanity set, you can use this all over the place, any place you want tissues and a little extra storage. Let's take a closer look at the finished items. Now, first up, the tray. It's very, very simple. It's just a rectangle of single crochet, then I single crocheted around the outside edge, added a few more rounds of white for the sides, and that's it. So if you can single crochet, you can follow this pattern. You can honestly make it any dimensions you want to. I found some vanity trays online and based mine on those, but if you want it wider, longer, it's totally up to you. Just crochet a rectangle and then crochet around the sides without increasing, and you will have made the vanity tray. That's really all there is to that one. So now let's take a closer look at the tissue box organizer. You can see here, it's got this great storage compartment all the way around, but again, it's just simple rows of single crochet. If I pull it off the tissue box here, you can see this one happens to be puffs, but I checked at the store and all of these square ones seem to be the same size. And like I said, if you want to do this for the longer style tissue box holders or tissue boxes rather, instructions are definitely included for that. So let's go ahead and pull up some yarn and walk through how to crochet your own tissue box organizer. All right, the first row of the crochet tissue box organizer calls for 16 foundation single crochets. I do have a separate tutorial linked at the link in the description where you can study how to make a foundation single crochet if you haven't made them before or you're not familiar. However, if you want to avoid making foundation single crochets, you can simply chain one more. So you would chain 17 and then work single crochets across. Basically, what we're trying to do here in this first row is make the width of the top of our tissue box. So if your number is slightly different, your gauge is slightly different, your yarn, you're using a different hook, you'll probably want to just go ahead and hold it up to your tissue box here. You can see it's the approximate width. We don't want it over, and just a little bit short is okay because we kind of want it to stretch around the tissue box a little bit to help hold it in place and give us a really snug fit. So however many stitches it is for you, again, for me it was 16, you want to go ahead and make that the width of your tissue box. Then we're simply going to chain one and work across in single crochets. So we just single crochet in each of those stitches, maintaining whatever that stitch count is, 16, 17, 15 if you need to adjust a little bit. And we're going to just keep making rows until we are just shy of halfway across the top of our box. You want the kind, generally speaking, if you're going to make a tissue box cover, you want the kind where the tissues stand up. So they've got this little plastic section, and you want to be working until you're halfway across the box. And I suppose it would be the same measurement either way, but if you hold it this way so that the opening is horizontal as well, that'll give you a really good idea. So you want to get just about halfway across the top of that box before you make what will be row 9 in the pattern. So for me, it was 8 rows of single crochet, got me just about to halfway, and then row 9 is where we make the opening. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few more rows to this. You do so as well, get to just about halfway across the top of your box, and then we'll work row 9 together. Okay, so I have finished 8 rows of my crochet tissue box organizer, and you can see if I hold it up to the top of my box here, it is just about halfway across the top here, again with the opening for the tissues held horizontally. So now I want to move on to row 9, where I am going to make the tissue box opening here in the crochet. So what I want to do first is chain 1, and I'm going to just single crochet in the first 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 2. Now, this is where you'll need to adjust it for your tissue box, particularly if you're using one of the wider ones or a non-standard size. Basically, you want to cover up this little end here, but on both ends, of course, but leave an opening for the tissues. So I found with this size, if I single crochet 2 and then make my long chain across and just single crochet in the last 2, that gave me the right size opening. So you may need to play with this a little bit for your size tissue box. But essentially we're going to work 2 single crochets in the first 2 stitches there. Then we just chain 12, 1, 2, and we are going to be working into these, so make sure they're not too tight. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then we're going to skip 12 stitches. I don't really need to count them because I know that's going to be everything except for these last 2. So we just come to these last 2 stitches and single crochet in each of those. And then at this point, you can hold it up to your box again, like so, and make sure that that's going to be enough room for your tissues to nicely fit through. Remember, it'll be pulled a little bit there as we put it on the box too. So we just want a really nice opening there. It's not going to rip up our tissues or anything like that. So once we've done that, then we can continue with written pattern. Rows 10 through 17, we're just going to chain 1, turn, and single crochet back across. Row 10, of course, is just a little different because we're working into stitches and chains rather than just into stitches. But after that, we're just single crocheting to finish covering the top of our box here. So for row 10, I do recommend that you single crochet into each of these individual chains rather than into the chain space. It's just going to give you a much nicer finished look to your project. So continue making rows of single crochet until you've got a nice square covering the top of your box here. Again, for me, I found that was 17 rows. And then what we're going to do is switch to rounds to start crocheting all the way around so that we work down the sides of our box. So there's a couple little tricks for that, so I'll show you that here in just a moment. Okay, so at the end of row 17, you should have a nice square with an opening in the center, or a rectangle, of course, if you're making a custom size, that fits just about the top of your tissue box, like so. So now it is time to start working in rounds so that we can work down the sides of our box. So what we want to do to begin round 18, we're going to chain 1 and turn and come back the other direction, just like a row, to begin with, but first we're going to work 2 single crochets in that very first stitch. So 1 and 2. And this is where I like to start using a stitch marker, since we're going to be working in rounds, to go ahead and mark the first and last stitch of each of these rounds. These are going to be turned rounds or joined rows. I've seen them called both, and marking the first and last stitch of these rounds makes it a lot easier to keep track of exactly which stitches are stitches and what's just a slip stitch join, because you don't want to end up working in there or you'll end up increasing. So after we've made our first 2 single crochets in the first stitch, we're just going to single crochet across the previous row here until one of those stitches remains. So just single crochet across until you come to the very last stitch of what would have been row 17, since we're now working on round 18. Okay, so there's just one more stitch left here at the end of the row. So I'm going to go ahead and work 2 single crochets right into this one. 1 and 2. Then I'm just going to evenly single crochet in the side of the rows here, just evenly along, until I get back down to what would have been the foundation chain here at the bottom. So we want to, for this size box, we want to evenly space 16 stitches along the side here. I found that worked out really well for me. But again, gauge isn't really important or anything like that. You just want to make sure it fits around your box nicely. So however many stitches you like to put in the side for your size of tissue box and your gauge is fine, as long as it's nice and even. So just single crochet evenly right along the side here. And then basically, I'll just talk you through it. Since again, it's single crochet. You know how to single crochet. You don't have to watch me do it. We're just going to work evenly along the side here. When we get down to the foundation chain, right here, the bottom of our foundation single crochet stitches, or a chain, if that's how you started, you want to just treat these as if they were the top of a stitch. So you would work 2 single crochets in that first one, work across here, 2 single crochets in that last one, and then single crochet evenly along the side again, so that when we get to the end here, you can join to that first marked stitch with a slip stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this round, and I'll see you at the end of round 18. Okay, so I have single crocheted all the way around my square here, and this is the last stitch before I join. So I do want to go ahead and put a stitch marker in this last stitch. And I think you'll see here why in just a moment. There we go. Get my hook back in that loop and go ahead and join with a slip stitch to that first stitch you made at the beginning of round 18. And now we are working in the round. So to continue, rounds 19 through 43 are all going to be the same. We're just going to single crochet in each stitch around so that we work down the side of our box, our tissue box here. So if your tissue box is a different height or you're making a custom one, again, that row count may change, but having your box handy and just trying it on as you go is the great tip there. So like I said, these are a little different. We are going to, after we join with a slip stitch, we are going to turn. So I have to do my chain 1 first, but then we're going to turn and work back from the other direction even though we've joined. And this is where those stitch markers come in really handy, because looking at it from this direction, it looks like this would be the first stitch of the round, but it's not. That is the slip stitch. We've got this stitch marked so we know exactly where to go. So we can just make our first single crochet right in that marked stitch, and then at this point, I like to take that stitch marker out and move it up to that marked stitch right there. And now I'll know as I come around that this is the first stitch of this round. So then I can just continue to single crochet in each stitch. There's no increases in these rounds. We are just working even. So if you're following the written instructions, it would be 68 stitches per round here. If you're making a custom size, obviously that will change. So we're just going to continue to single crochet around. Then when we get to the end here, you can see this stitch marker is our last marked stitch. Again, this one wants to hide because it's got a stitch kind of right there going into it. It looks like it's already been worked, but this one is going to be our last stitch that we work into before we join. So when we make the last stitch of this round, that's when I would go ahead and move that stitch marker up before joining to this one and turning to come back the other direction. Then when I come back, that'll be our first stitch marker. So using stitch markers here for turned rounds is really, really helpful so you don't end up accidentally increasing in the slip stitch or skipping that last stitch, little tricks like that. So just go ahead and continue crocheting in rounds until you have got the height of your tissue box. Then we're going to do just a couple rounds of increases to create that great storage area. All right, so I just finished round 19 and you can see it's already starting to come down the sides, and I can check and make sure the fit of my tissue box organizer here is going to work for my tissue box, which it looks like it's right on track. So I'm going to set this aside for a minute and pull back up the finished one here. And if I unfold this here, you can see, hopefully, that we are going to, like I said, just keep making even rounds until we get to the height of our box right there. So for me, that was 43 rounds. And I wanted to point out too, the reason we're turning our rounds and working back and forth in opposite directions, even though we're working in the round, is so that we maintain the same stitch look here. If you look at single crochet, there is definitely a right and wrong side to the stitches, or just two different looks, I should say. If we worked in the round without turning, this fabric would look different than the fabric on top. The other reason for the turn is that you can see right here is our seam, and it stays right in the corner of the box. It doesn't have a slant to it. When you're working in the round, normally we get a slant simply because the stitches are always slightly offset. By turning, we get a really nice straight seam that'll go right down the corner of our box. Just looks a little bit better, and it will make our increases in the next two rounds a little bit easier as well. So here is round 44, where we work our first round of increases, and then round 45, and then you can see as you're crocheting that actually we'd be going this direction since we're crocheting down the side of the box, and then we have just those couple little rows of increases. That makes it a little bit wider, and then that is where our flip happens. We just do a little fold that creates the cover plus storage area. So let's just go ahead and go over those increase rows now. Here I just have my little swatch, and again, I've only gone through round 19, but we're going to go ahead and pretend we're ready for round 44. So I've moved my stitch markers up, and I have joined with a slip stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and chain one and turn. We're still going to maintain our turns here. And then to begin round 44, we are going to work the entire round in the front loop only. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tops of our stitches here. Now you can see the top of a stitch has this sort of V shape, and generally speaking, when we crochet, we go under both of those loops. When you're working under the front loop only, you're going to go under the loop that is the one closest to you. The front loop and back loop are always relative to you, the crocheter. So if you turn your work, they'll flip, they'll switch. Now this one's the front loop and this one's the back loop. If I'm going this way, this one's the front loop and that one is the back loop. So to go under the front loop only, it's just as easy as it sounds. You go under just that one loop and bring your hook up in the middle of that V. Then you can go ahead and make your first single crochet like so. And again, I'm going to go ahead and move that stitch marker up like so. And then I'm just going to go ahead and work 15 more front loop only single crochets for a total of 16. So there's 2, 3, 4, and I'll see you as soon as I've got 16 of these made. But I just want to go ahead and point out before I move on here that by working in that front loop only, we've got that back loop only there unworked, and that's what's going to help us create the great fold in our organizer. So just continue working until you've got 16 of these front loop only single crochets, and then we're going to work an increase. All right, so after you've made 16 front loop only single crochets, or if you're making a custom size, however many it takes to get you to that next corner, so probably your stitch count divided by 4, we're going to do an increase. We're just going to work 2 single crochets in the next stitch, still going under the front loop only, like so. We work 1 and then 2, right back in that same stitch. And that gives us our little increase there. That will give us the flare that allows us to fold it up for our organizer section of our tissue box cover. So then it's just the same repeat. Front loop only single crochet in the next 16, or whatever gets you to the next corner. Do work 2 in that next stitch, another 16, 2 in the next stitch, and another 16, and finally there would be 2 in that very last stitch before we do our join. So I'll continue making my increases while you make yours, and then we'll be ready for round 45. All right, so at the end of round 44, if you've been following the written instructions, you should have 72 stitches, or 4 more than however many you had in the previous round. And you should be having that ridge there from the unworked back loops right there, which will help us create the fold when we fold up the sides for our organizer. So now we're ready for round 45, which is simply chain 1, and of course, turn to work back the other direction. And this time, we're going to go ahead and work under both loops. That front loop only, that was only for round 44. The rest of the time, we work in the standard fashion. So now I'm just going to go ahead and single crochet in the first 8 stitches before I put in an increase. So we've just got a few more increases in this round, and you may want to again customize this for your own tissue box. I found that this worked well for me. But if you wanted, say, a tighter flap, maybe you wouldn't want to put as many increases in, or if you wanted a much bigger storage area, you could add a couple more. Feel free to customize this section as much as you like. But for me, I found that if I made 8 single crochets before I made an increase and then just repeated that on around, that worked out pretty darn well. So let's see here. We've got our stitch marker, always handy. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then 8, and then we'll just go ahead and put 2 right in the next stitch. Like I said, just go ahead and work under both of those loops. So continue that repeat around, 8 more, then 2 in the next, 8 more, then 2 in the next, until you've worked all the way around for round 45. Okay, so here we've got our finished tissue box organizer again. You can see here we've got the bump from rounds 44 and 45 where we've got our increases, and then after that we're just working even again. So again, if you're following the written instructions, at the end of round 45 you'd have 80 stitches. If you've customized, you'll have however many you've made, but just go ahead and work even, turning back and forth in rows until you've made the height of the organizer you like. I did work the last few rows, or rounds I should say, in a contrasting color because I thought that looked really nice. But you can do whatever colors you like. Don't switch colors. You make it all one. Switch colors every couple rounds if you want. I think this would be a lot of fun in some of those color changing yarns too, especially for a little girl's room. So let me go ahead and pull this over here. You can see here is that unworked back loop only round. You can see that's still hanging out there. And what that does is it sort of pushes those stitches this way, which creates a really nice fold right there for our organizer. So if you're following the written instructions again, like I did it, the total number of rounds up the sides here, it brings up to 61. So after round 45 was our final round of increases. Rounds 46 through 58, I just worked evenly in the gray. And then rounds 59 through 61, I did work color B, which was the white here. And then, like I said, just finish off, fold it up right at that back loop only line, and you've got your storage section right there. So like I say, if you add more increases, this will get a little bigger. If you take some away, it'll get a little tighter, but hopefully it will fit right on top of your tissue box. And that gives it all the sturdiness you need there to make that storage section really handy. I love it for my crochet hooks. This one is, however, going to be heading up to my vanity table where I will be putting my makeup brushes in it. I can't wait to put it to good use up there, but you could certainly use it on whatever you like. So that's how to crochet the Pampering Vanity set, crochet, tissue box organizer, and tray. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you go to the link in the description. There you'll find a link out to Moogly blog where I've got both the right and left-handed video tutorials, a link out to the written pattern, and links to all the supplies you need. So please do go ahead and check that out. It'll answer 90% of your questions, and those that I don't answer there, please feel free to leave me a comment either here or on the blog. I am always happy to help. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie. It's absolutely delightful for this pattern as well as many others. And don't forget to subscribe.